Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Learning to Code in Kotlin. So in this episode I'm going to solve the problem compare the triplet. As you can see on the left side we have the problem statement, which is a big one, and I know you guys you don't want to read it. It seems a little bit daunting and scary, but I'm going to make it easier for you. What we want to focus on is what we are going to be working with, and in our case that is two array. Here we see that we receive two arrays as input parameters, and these two arrays are of type int. And if we go and read the problem statement, we can see here that each of these arrays have three elements. And basically they say that these array represent the score Alice and Bob each receive on creating one problem for HackerRank. So basically each of them are receiving a score on an assignment they are performing, and each array contains three elements on which each of them are scored. These three elements are irrelevant to solving the problem, but they are here: clarity, originality, and difficulty. And so basically what they are asking us is to come up with a function to rate each of them, to basically compare which one is doing better. And the scoring is going to be like this. If Alice has done better than Bob, then she receives 1 point. If Alice has done worse than Bob, then Bob receives 1 point. And if both of them have the same score, then no one receives a point. So basically that's the problem statement. We have to figure out whether Alice did a better job or Bob did a better job. And then we are given an example. Basically we have two arrays and a score for each component on which each candidate has to be graded. So for the first element we see that Bob has a higher score. Bob has 3, Alice has 1. So Bob will have 1 point. Then for the second element we see that both of them have the same score. Both of them have 2, so no one gets a point. And finally for the third element, Alice has a higher score than Bob, so she gets a point. And the final score is an array of 2 elements with the score of each candidate in them. So we have 1 for Alice and 1 for B, and we have to return this to complete the function. And here we have the function description and we have the return type. So basically the return type or the returned element is what is expected from us to deliver, and it's the format of our answer. In our case, the format, what they are looking for is an array of 2 elements with first the score of Alice in it and second the score of Bob. And then of course here we have the input format, the constraint. So basically the constraint is also an important thing to look at. And what you understand from here is that each of the score components are going to be between 1 and 100. So that's good to know. And we're giving a sample input and a sample output. So this is an input and this is an output. And we have some explanation here, etc. But I think at this point we have enough elements to go ahead and start coding the solution. What we want to do here is to be able to compare these two arrays at the same time. So I'm going to do it with the help of a while loop, and I'm going to use an index for that. So I set my index to 0. And I start my while loop. And I know that each array contains 3 elements. So I'm gonna try and loop as long as my index is less than 3. What is also helpful is to declare 2 arrays named Alice and Bob so that we can keep track of the score. And then here we can start our comparison. So basically what I'm going to be doing is compare. If Alice's score is bigger than Bob's scores, I will increment her score. I will add 1 to her score. Then else if the opposite is correct, which means if Alice's score is less than Bob's scores, I will increment Bob's score. And else, which basically that's something I don't need to cover, because when both scores are equal, basically no one gets awarded a point, so we can omit the else clause here. What we want to replace here is that we have to have the index instead of 0, so that we are doing it for all the elements. And then, of course, at the end here, we want to be incrementing our index in order for us to compare the score components in the next iteration. So the first time is here we're going to have 0 since we initialize it to 0, then it's going to increment to 1, to 2, and then we're going to get out of the for loop, the while loop, sorry. And I chose a while loop, but it can also be done with other type of loops. And so what remains to be done here, after we obtain the score for each one, we have a score for Alice, we have a score for Bob. What remains to be done is to return the score in a format that was asked for us. And the format they asked from us is here, the return. So basically we need an integer array of 2 elements which contains Alice's score in the first position and Bob's score in the second. So what we're gonna do is simply that. So I'm gonna name the array score, and I'm gonna put in the scores. Alice as the first element and Bob as the second element. And at this point we can simply return the score array. So now it's time for testing. So I'm just going to basically run the code to make sure the code is error-free and it compiles. And it also passes some initial results here, sample test case 0 and 1. So that's good. And at this point, we can go ahead and submit our code for more thorough testing. So basically, we see that we have 6 test cases here and all of them passed. So that means that we have produced correct code, and our code is functional and is producing correct results. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you in another episode.